Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Hey, Yonah, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sam. It's a pleasure to join you.
Oh, man, it's great to have you, quote unquote, live and in person. Is the closest thing we're going to get today, which is great. Thank you for joining me. For those of you who can't see the green screen behind Yonah, he has been so kind as to find a picture of Beale Street here in Memphis and use it as his backdrop. So look for that if you can when this goes live on YouTube. In the meantime, obviously you're kind of a LinkedIn star in the real estate world. And that's kind of an impressive feat. I think every time I turn around, there's Yonah Weiss posting something useful, something helpful. And we certainly appreciate that. So enough of the accolades, which I'm sure there's plenty more to go on. Love having you on here. Just give us a background if you can. The basic flow of the show is where'd you start, where are you now, and how did you get there? Things you did right and things you did wrong. Obviously you specialize though in cost segregation and some unique aspects of real estate. So I'd love to kind of hear really your background in that, how you got into it, what you see people doing right, wrong. And then maybe if we have time left over, we'll talk about your LinkedIn mastery.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for all those compliments. It's always great to join the podcast and feel welcomed. And obviously you got the hometown hospitality here in Memphis. I appreciate it. It's great. I mean, as you said, the background is a lot of fun. That's one of the little things that I like to do when I go on a podcast. Is just kind of be in person as much as possible, which is difficult nowadays. So if I can get a background that represents where you are. I know you're probably not on Beale Street right now, but close enough.
Close enough. Closer than you are in person, actually. So
exactly.
I love it.
I mean, a little bit about me. I have really a background in teaching. Was a teacher for about 15 years. That's really my passion. What I love to do. Education doesn't really fit the bill a lot of times. And about 5-6 years ago, I got involved in real estate. One way or another, kind of long story. I don't want to get into it now, but I did some mortgages, commercial mortgages, doing some fix and flips. Was involved with hard money loans for a short stint. Got my real estate realtor broker's license, so I could, wanted to sell. I just really wanted to learn everything there was to know about real estate, and I came across Bigger Pockets and podcasts, etc. Got involved in LinkedIn when I was hired by this company, Madison, which is currently where I'm at, the cost segregation company, and that was an incredible journey to itself. Now, I'm not, don't have an accounting background. I don't have an engineering background, but I have a teaching background. And apparently that's really what they needed. They needed someone who was able to help with the business development. It's an incredible company, been around for 15, 16 years, the biggest national cost segregation company, and they wanted to grow, had a lot to grow. And I just came in, helped to just get the word out about cost segregation. And so my background in teaching kind of gave me the ability to learn this. And I love real estate, don't get me wrong, and was involved in it for a few years before I found this, but gave me the ability, because of that teaching, I learned things very quickly, and I can sit down with experts, for an extended period of time, really just follow them around. And that's exactly what I did. The experts in our company, the CPAs and the engineers that have been doing it for decades, just literally sat with them, followed them around for months, and then just started, putting out content, getting on podcasts, just teaching the world about this. And, daily I'm still in touch with them. And so this has been going on for a few years until now I'm the cost segregation expert in the world.
Now that's fascinating. I'm really curious how that job, how they hired you for that position. Hey, come follow everybody around, learn what they do, and then share it with the world. I mean, it's not an opportunity you get every day.
I kind of figured that out on my own. Really, that wasn't really the position. It was, we want to grow, open to, ideas and ways to do that. And really, I just took my creative, ideas and teaching background and realized I have the ability to learn something very complex very quickly and then be able to teach it. And this was a concept I found, and your listeners probably, either you've heard of cost segregation and you know what it is really well,
right,
or you've probably never heard of it. You're in one of those two categories. And that's exactly what I found. I started, when I got hired, first started to talk to everyone that I knew in real estate. And I knew a lot of people by that point. I'm a pretty good networker. And so I know a lot of people. I literally spoke to hundreds of people and was just asking them, what do you know about cost segregation? I'm curious. I wanted to hear what the industry, what people in the field, property owners, brokers, et cetera, knew about this. And I got one of two answers. It was literally two opposite ends of the spectrum. It was either, yes, cost segregation is awesome. We do it on every property. We're doing this for years, huge tax deductions, et cetera. Or the other answer I got was, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never heard of cost segregation. And there was nothing in between, literally. There was no, oh yes, I've heard of it and I've spoken to my accountant and nothing. So I found there's a huge gap of knowledge out there. And that's really literally where I just jumped in.
Right. And once you understand the basics, I think, of cost seg, it's a no-brainer. Once you get into these larger assets. So why do you think what has caused this disparity between those two types? Like what brought that on?
Probably because when people think about taxes, usually like their brains shut off.
Right.
Right. Most people, their taxes are like, I have an accountant and he knows my taxes.
Right. Exactly.
Right? But the problem with that is that most accountants, first of all, 99% of accountants can't do this. It's out of their wheelhouse because it's the engineering component too. And second of all, most accountants aren't proactive enough to tell you about all of those, things that you can do to save money. And so that's really where this big gap came from.
Right. Yeah, I could see that because you get a specialized CPA and that's what they do. They do year-end taxes. They're not tax strategists. They're not tax planners. Inside of your firm, do you guys, and you said this already, but I just want to clarify. You guys have in-house CPAs and in-house people that understand this.
Yeah.
That can kind of bridge that gap. How does that work with the traditional? Well, let's just use me for an example. I've got my own CPA. We've been working together for years. We have all these different LLCs and stuff, all doing a great job. But I say, you know what? He doesn't understand anything. I know he doesn't anything about cost segregation. So how do those two work together?
So we're not an accounting firm. And I think that's the really big difference here. We are specialized in cost segregation. And we're there really just to kind of bridge that gap and to be able to provide that education, have the conversations, and include your CPA along with it. Because what we do in the cost segregation, it's a pretty simple process.
Right.
And in the end of the day, what we'll create is, besides for this very detailed, lengthy, study, which has all of the details of the engineering breakdown components of the property and the depreciation, et cetera. And we didn't even discuss at all what that is. But in the end of the day, what we do, there's one page in that report. That's your new depreciation schedule. That gets handed off to your accountant and they're happy. That's it. We've done all the work for them. And there's not really much to know. Obviously, there are certain scenarios where it's not going to apply. It's not going to be beneficial. So we have those discussions and see, can this be good for you? Maybe not.
Right. That's interesting. So you kind of give it's not the bottom line up front, but it's essentially the one sheet that says, hey, this is what it is. And any accountant that gets that understands it.
Exactly. And we, even beyond that, we'll provide an estimate beforehand, upfront, for free. And so you'll basically know what your depreciation schedule potentially will look like after getting, this process done ahead of time. So it's already provides that from the beginning.
That's awesome. Let's rewind a little bit. Maybe I didn't even talk about this yet, but can you define cost segregation for us and why it's necessary? We might have missed this. So if our listeners are going, what is this? What are we actually talking about here? Let's go back a little bit and kind of give a brief overview.
Rewind a little. Cost segregation it's a crazy name, weird name, but essentially what it is accelerated depreciation. So it's an advanced form of depreciation. And depreciation is a tax deduction that any property owner has. And basically, when you buy a property, you're allowed to take the entire value of that property as a tax deduction, a tax write-off, but not all at once. Okay. It takes over a long period of time. So essentially, that's what depreciation is. You take a property, you take off a certain amount for land from your purchase price, and then you divide that either by 27 and a half years, if it's a residential multifamily property, or by 39 years, if it's any other type of commercial property. That's simple depreciation. What we do is break that those costs, we segregate the costs into different categories. That things in your property actually, many things depreciate on a much faster rate. So we'll be able to identify what that is and get that depreciation at a faster rate. Okay, that's cost segregation. Some things depreciate on a 5-year schedule, some on a 7, some on a 15-year schedule. And essentially, we're accelerating that depreciation and getting those tax deductions upfront.
So 2 questions on that. What are some of those things? And then secondly, why is this beneficial? I'm giving you a layup here, but why is this beneficial to us as investors?
So a few of those things that depreciate faster, main building and the structural components, those are the things that really depreciate on the 27.5 or 39-year schedule. And we'll identify what those are. So there's walls, floor, windows, doors, roof, et cetera, structural components. And that's always going to be the majority. But other things like furniture, fixtures, appliances, equipment, countertops even, or cabinets, all these things that are really in the building and they're not structural, even if they're attached, right? Like the bookshelves behind you, all of those have value to them and they depreciate on a 5-year schedule. Okay. Oh, wow. So now we can take the value, identify what the value of all that stuff is, depreciate it on a 5-year schedule and get those. And so to follow up with the next question is, why is that beneficial? Because having more tax deductions means having more cash flow. If you don't have to pay taxes, then all of your income stays in your pocket and you don't have to pay Uncle Sam his portion, which is really not his portion in the first place. It's yours. This is something I want to put this out there. A lot of people, I don't know about you, but I've worked, in corporate America. And when we come from corporate America, we have this really strange kind of outlook on taxes, because we get it taken out of our paycheck before we ever see the money we make.
Right.
Right. And so you may think, oh, I'm making 6 figures or whatever that is, but how much are you keeping? Right. How much of that is you keeping? There's a big paradigm shift when it comes to real estate, which is you actually get to keep all the money that you make. At the end of the year, now you have to figure out how many deductions do I have? How much is left over that is a tax liability and how much do I have to pay? But the great thing is with depreciation and the cost segregation, you can actually have total, full deductions on your income, which means you have zero tax liability. So that money you're making, you're actually keeping.
Right. I love that because the money comes in the door and it stays in your pocket, once it's there. Talk to us. I had a question on this. Oh, here we go. And this is what good editing is for as I stumble around. When it comes to, average percentages, and I know I'm asking you to pull a rabbit out of a hat here, but let's say you have a $10 million apartment complex. Like, is there an average return or an average amount of that value that you find that you can segregate? Like, are you able to find $1 million that you can segregate? Is it typically 40? I mean, what's that look like?
It depends on each type of property, but for multifamily properties, let's just talk to that. There's typically around, I'd say on average, about 25%. And sometimes it can be 20%, sometimes it can be even 30 or 35%, but on average, about 25% of the purchase price, really of the basis. So again, you take the purchase price, you subtract a certain amount for land, usually about 15, 20, and then whatever's left over, about 25% of that, you can take as accelerated depreciation.
Right. So if it's a $10 million property, $2 million of that goes to land, and then that leaves you 25% of that $8 million roughly. So you're finding $2 million that you can write off much sooner than 27.5 or 39 years.
Exactly. And not just faster. I mean, again, there's 5-year property, 15-year property, which is land improvements, landscaping, pavement, stuff like that. But the great thing about this is currently in the tax law, there's something called 100% bonus depreciation, which means I literally just did a post on LinkedIn today about this, but it says you can take all of that accelerated depreciation in the first year as a tax write-off. So that $12 million property, whatever, first year, $2 million tax write-off right off the bat.
Wow. Now that's crazy. That's crazy because if you have a $10 million property, I don't know what that's going to throw off in NOI, maybe $1 million a year. You just made your first million and then your next year's first million tax free.
tax-free, which means all that money you can now take, reinvest, and think about the compound interest. If you're doing this every single year, buy another property and keep reinvesting it, it's incredible.
Right. No, that's amazing. That's amazing. And how often do you speak with people? I know you said there's 2 investors, but how many times have you had seasoned investors come to you and just go, oh, crud, why didn't I know about this a decade ago?
Yeah, it happens. It definitely is less likely. More seasoned investors obviously have a little more sad, but definitely happens. People are surprised and wondering why their accountants haven't told them about this.
Wow. That's crazy. Let's talk about what it costs. I know every project is different, so I'm not asking you guys to say, hey, well, exactly, here's your, to the dollar fee for getting this done. But is there a range that we can kind of build in, even in our pro formas or even in our, as we're doing underwriting, to say, hey, man, this is what it's going to cost to add cost seg to this project. What's that look like?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, like I said, we'll do a free analysis up front, so you'll know ahead of time what your tax deductions will even look like.
Right.
But beyond that, the cost of it, it's not contingent to your tax savings. So if you have $1 million property or $10 million property, the fee is probably going to be pretty much around the same, which means that's incredible in terms of the tax savings. Typically for multifamily properties, somewhere in the range of about $4,000 to $6,000. It's almost nothing, right? It's crazy. But because currently in 2021, we're, the biggest national conservation company. So we have, pretty much the most competitive prices as well. And certain types of commercial buildings, there's more scope of work involved. So there's going to be more involved. It could be more than that. I mean, I've seen even upwards of $10,000 for large commercial properties. But again, it all depends.
Right. So that just seems inconsequential. Inconsequential in relation to the total cost of the savings that you're able to achieve. What type of properties is this not good for?
Really, it's good for any type of property. The only property it doesn't work for, obviously, is your personal residence, because you don't get any deductions for that. But warehouses, for example, will have much less benefit, because essentially there's not much personal property in there. There's not much stuff that's movable. But again, any type of property, even for single families, it can really work for, and you can get the tax benefit.
What about, would you lump self-storage in with warehousing?
No, because self-storage is actually quite different than warehouses, because there's a lot of different assets in there, believe it or not, that can be better depending on how it's made, depending on how it's built. For example, climate control, which is a very big ticket item in a self-storage, all that's 5-year property, and you'll be able to write that off much faster. There are certain things that maybe are certain types of doors and security systems and all kinds of other digital things that you'll have within the property, especially newly developed self-storage facilities will have on every single unit, like a special lock or something like that. Those things can all be depreciated faster. And so identifying what all those details are, that's really where the value of this is.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So I've got a self-storage. Here's an example. I'll pick your brain while I've got you on the phone. I've got a self-storage, a boat and RV storage we're building right now. It's 198 units, the roll-up garage doors. It's got electrical going to it. Obviously, there's no specialized locks or alarm systems. It's a great build, but it's a county build out near a giant reservoir. So there's not all the bells and whistles you'd might expect, say, in a downtown, area. So it doesn't need all of that. But there's land, there's buildings, there's electrical components, there's doors, there's stuff like that. I mean, is that something that is worth doing a cost seg study on?
Can definitely be done, especially because of a lot of the land improvements as well, which you don't really recognize. And so pavement, bollards, even things like, concrete and landscaping, fencing, signage, even outdoor lighting, all that stuff, each individual asset has value to it. All that can be depreciated faster.
Right. Oh yeah. No, that's great. That's not even something I've thought about. Well, thanks for coming on and clarifying that for us. You probably just saved me and our investors a pile of money. So this is great. This is great. Hey, we've got just a short time here left, and I really want to hear what it is. You're on LinkedIn, so we're gonna switch gears, right? You're a LinkedIn kind of profile master, and I love seeing what you do. Can you talk to us how you have, like, what your strategy is there and how you've really found that to work for you? And secondly, how do you keep up producing so much good content?
It's challenging producing the content, but I'd say consistency, doing it regularly every single day for a certain period of time really just gets you in the groove. And content, the best kind of content is really just sharing your story. Okay. Sharing what's happening. So for example, I just took a screenshot of me and you on this podcast. I'm going to go and post that on LinkedIn and say, hey, I was just on Sam's podcast. That's an example of something you can do. I just had a meeting. I was just doing, people like to hear stories. And so content creation is one aspect of it, but that's not the most important part of LinkedIn. The most important part of LinkedIn, in my opinion, I see it like a 24-hour, 7-day a week networking event. 6 day a week. I keep the Sabbath, so I'm not there on Saturdays, but networking event, which means you're there to network with other people. So it's not just about connecting with people. It's not just about creating content, but it's about engaging with other people and getting to know people through their content and through those conversations you can have in the comments. And that really just leads to more and more relationships, more and more people you get to know. And each new relationship creates new opportunities.
Right. I love that. Let's jump into the final four here. If you were to give, or let's start that over. Let's jump into the final four here. What is one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring investor?
Find someone that you can learn from that's been doing it for a lot longer, and see if you can just apprentice them and stick around, just follow them around and learn everything that they're doing just from, boots on the ground.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What's one thing you're currently doing to stay on top of your game?
One thing I'm doing to stay on top of my game. Which game?
Any of them. You pick. It's You Pick Tuesday.
Yeah. I think, I listen to podcasts, and I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that provide tremendous amount of value, whether that's an inspiration or whether it's an actual practical, active practical advice in terms of how to scale your business in any way, which way. So that's what I do.
Got it. Love that. When it comes to giving back, what's one way you're making the world a better place?
There are a lot of organizations that I support, especially in Israel. I'm a very big fan of, obviously being an Orthodox Jew. It's something that I, live up to. And there are, orphans organizations that help them. Unfortunately, tragedy happens and strikes many people. And until you've gone through something like that, we have no idea what that's like. And, just try to, even financially supporting is one way.
Got it. That's awesome. Yonah, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Best way, find me on LinkedIn. But if you want to go to YonahWeiss.com, just my name, you can find more about what we're doing over there.
Awesome. Yonah, thank you for your time today. I certainly appreciate it.
Pleasure, Sam. It's a pleasure. Thanks.